Okay, so we are live now, and I welcome everyone to this episode of Read with a Teacher. This is stage for the last 3 years has brought many opportunities for me to engage with scholars, educators, teachers, principals from across the country. And but there are rare opportunities when I get the opportunity basically to speak to the people who has really influenced me. And today I'm glad that Manjuji is here with me, uh, whose work has always inspired me. So I welcome Manju. Uh, you are a principal at DPS North, a Fulbright scholar, a common thread that connects me to you, and a national awardee, and many more that, in fact, I haven't asked you to share your bio, right? Because at this platform, we just read and enjoy and celebrate the books. So, of course, it will be a great, opportunity for all of us who are here right now, who will be watching it later, uh, to have this conversation with you. So, I welcome you to this session, and we will be reading a book which will be a little different than what we claim education literature, but a book which has the potential to shape what we practice in our schools. So in that way, not exactly related to the educational literature, but something which may have a bigger impact on what we practice in our schools. So the stage is yours, Chandanji, and I, and all our colleagues here in Delhi. Welcome you, Manjuji from Bangalore.
Thank you.
And it is really interesting, and I often ask and we will keep it like bilingual. Uh, you are running a very unique school in Bangalore with 8,000 students, 400 teachers. Uh, I mean, and you are still reading. How does it happen? How has
Uh,
been your journey of reading? Yeah.
I think I need to give the credit for my love for books to my father,
Oh.
an Air Force officer. He traveled a lot. And before that, I think to my grandmother who told me stories on the terrace in
Mm-hmm.
the hot summers in Nagpur of the
Mm.
Ramayana and Mahabharata. And when
Right.
I moved from there to be with my parents, my father introduced me to Amar Chitra Kathas.
Mm.
So the Ramayana that was listened to was now being read to me by him. And every time
Right.
he came back from his travels, my brother and I would rush to open his suitcase and say, कि आपकी कौन सी किताब लेके आए?
Right.
And over a period of time, because we lived in an Air Force camp, we had friends and limited resources थे उन दिनों, सबके पास सारी किताबें नहीं होती थी. तो we would say
Mm-hmm.
कि अच्छा बार्टर सिस्टम चलता था कि आज
Okay.
मैंने ये पढ़ी है, तुमने क्या पढ़ी है, और लेट्स एक्सचेंज. तो समर्स में हम लोग का
Mm.
काम यही होता था कि हम एक दूसरे के घर जाएं और किताबें
Mm-hmm.
लेकर आएं. And
Okay.
so we would have a larger share of books to read and more fun. And that love for books was amplified by a school teacher of mine,
Mm-hmm.
Miss Swarn Bakshi Wadhwa, who was my English
Okay.
teacher in grade
Mm-hmm.
10 in KV
Okay.
Chandigarh, Sector 31. And
Mm.
she brought the books we had in our textbook into the classroom. To Serve
Mm.
with Love by
Mm.
E.R. Braithwaite or Roots by Alex Haley. They were
Yeah.
just not the chapter, but the entire book. And if I was reading that at age 15, my brother was reading it at age 12. And
Okay.
that,
Okay.
and in our class of 40, I think everybody had read Roots by the end of 10th.
Mm.
So she inspired that reading. And
Mm.
when I was around 18, I met my husband, who
Mm.
again is a voracious reader. And I
Mm.
think that was the common thread between us. And we
Right.
met at a library.
Oh.
And since then, the love for books has constantly happened. And we are surrounded by books. I've had
Right.
friends, Shukti Dutt,
Mm.
another very dear friend, who's read
Mm-hmm.
very intensively. So yes, I
Yeah.
think it's just that. Yeah.
Fantastic. So what I could figure it out that it's the people in the journey and the people who were reading, they have a great role to play. And to continue reading, it is important that you again be surrounded by people who read.
Very much so.
Fan-
And I forgot to
Fantastic.
mention my children.
Oh,
So there was
lovely.
a time when I thought
Mm.
my husband's and my love for books did
Yeah.
not was not inherited by them, but
Okay.
I realized very soon that they read far more than us and
Oh,
far more genres. So
oh,
my daughter inspired me to read on comparative religion,
mm,
and in various aspects of modern medicine and biotechnology. So I think
mm.
they played a very important role. And now I read for my grandson. So I
Oh,
read the kind of
lovely.
books he would like to read.
Oh, amazing, amazing. But one part of the question was also that how, being a principal of such a big school, we often listen, and that's a truth also, that a lot of engagement in different kind of work, but you still continue to read. I mean, does that administrative work somehow you feel that becomes challenging
No, I think for
the
me,
reading?
reading is my time.
Okay,
So
okay,
I would give a bahana ki walk नहीं जा सकते, exercise नहीं कर सकते क्योंकि book पढ़ना है.
right,
So I would rather cuddle into bed and read a book every day,
right.
some pages. For me, that is life. So I would love
Okay,
to read. Yes, I'll make time to read. And the beauty is today I can read on my phone as well if I don't have a book.
yeah, that's fantastic. And yeah, in many ways, in fact, I used to drive a lot. So, like the place of my work and the place where I live, it's generally at least 1 hour I have to drive. So I use this time in listening the audiobooks or even the PDFs through text-to-speech software. So a lot of facilities are now available through technology to read, and it will be also interesting from you to know that how. I mean, before it, we have spoken to a large number of teachers, but as a principal, how that reading which you read from different genres, it helps you in your role as a principal.
I think reading connects me with the world I'm in today, the present, the past, and the future. It
Right.
connects me with the elderly, my age group, and the young.
Mhm.
It takes me into science and science fiction,
Mhm.
into every discipline that I can think of.
Right.
Uh, uh, from 20,000 leagues under the sea to
Mm,
10 billion.
mm,
That is the spread, and I think as a teacher, when I teach
mm,
biology, if
mm,
I can relate biology to physics, and if
mm,
I can relate it to anthropology, and if I can
mm,
relate it to ecology and evolution, my
mm.
class becomes that much more interesting. This is
Right.
not a teacher who's just coming and teaching from the textbook. She's read
Mhm.
the news, she has another book to talk about, she has an idea about science fiction,
Mhm.
she can talk about a biography, and
Mm,
that just mm, takes the class to a different level. I mean, the class is excited saying, today, what is she going to tell us? What is she going to
mm,
read out from? Which is the other
mm.
book that we're going to be introduced to? So
Right.
it is not only magical for the students, it's magical for me because the textbook hasn't changed in the 20 years that I've taught.
Right. Right.
But what I read changes every day. And
Yeah.
that is what I can bring to my classroom. So I think
Yeah.
all the things that we talk about, interdisciplinary, connecting the dots, nothing is in isolation,
Mm,
comes from extensive reading. And I think more so for a teacher, a good teacher is not someone who can speak volumes
mm,
on a subject. A good teacher
mm,
is someone who can make complex simple.
mm,
Only if you are very, very well read and you are
mm.
thorough with what you are thinking, can you
Yeah.
make it simple for someone else to understand. And I
Right.
think reading helps me in that.
Fantastic. So before I, draw your attention to the book of the day, 10 billion, I think I should not miss asking for what your school is so famous for. As I wrote a post today that I was attending a conference in Bangalore, and the researcher was presenting, and she quoted from her field note that my principal says that inclusion is not a matter of choice here, and how can there be education without inclusion? Later, I came to know that this is the school you run, basically. Uh, so a little bit of that inclusive school, particularly where there are 8,000 children, how it is possible. Of course, I see a link between the wider reading that you have, but it will be really interesting for all of us to know a little about how even the mainstream school like yours with 8,000 children can be a proper inclusive school.
I think the one quality that is fundamental
Mm,
to children is
mm,
unconditional love.
mm,
So if you have a community of teachers, parents, stakeholders who believe that every child should have a social gathering,
mm.
then an inclusive school happens. It just
Right.
happens. And we've been very lucky. I have been very lucky to have a management who believed in me and
Mm.
a team of teachers who stayed with me for the last 20 years. We are
Oh.
a large team who stayed together at DPS Bangalore North. And
Mhm.
we do really believe that every child needs to be in school and no
Right.
child should be left behind. And
Mhm.
once we developed that mindset and we said there could be alternatives to school education, and education is not just academics, but it
Right.
starts with social recognition and acceptance. uh,
Right.
we I mean, help came from outside. Help came from organizations that work with special ed. So Spastic Society became our mentors, NIOS
Right.
became the alternate board,
Mm.
the Chandrasekhar Institute for Speech and Hearing became
Mm.
our ears. The National Association for Blind became our eyes. So
Right.
young people, entrepreneurs joined us, and it was just a growth every day. And suddenly, parents from all across the country were moving into the school. Did we know
Mhm.
everything? No. Do we know everything? We don't. But we said we will learn with every child. And when
Right.
a child with special needs came, then we took the parents as our teachers because they were living with that child every day and they knew what was
Right.
the issue. And so they could
Right.
guide us and we learned. Today, we
Mm.
have a team of about 28 to 30 special educators and counselors. We have
Mhm.
about 40 mothers in campus as shadow
Mm.
every day. We
Mm.
have
Mm.
other people as shadow. We have my youngest child who scribes for a friend who
Mm.
cannot write an
Mm.
exam is in
Mm.
third standard.
Okay.
And we have all the accommodations and exemptions that the board can give. We
Okay.
have inclusive sport uh,
Right.
where our children learn to play blind football. We work with organizations. Children from other organizations are on our campus. We are
Mhm.
involved in some kind of a research all the time. So this
Mm.
year, two PhD scholars from the University of Missouri are going to be on
Mm.
our campus, understanding inclusive practices on our campus. So
Fantastic.
yeah,
Fantastic. Yeah.
we've just left the doors and windows open, Murari,
Yeah.
to learn
Yeah.
from and to share.
So that's one of the secret I feel that to stay open, collaborate with the people outside with the organizations, and that somehow helps it, happen. The kind of school that you could develop. Fantastic. So now I will, draw your attention to the book that we are going to read. And in the very beginning, on the very first page only, I found a very fantastic paragraph. This is a book about us. It's a book about you, your children, your parents, your friends. It's about every one of us. It's about our failure as individuals, the failure of business, and the failure of our politicians. It's about the unprecedented planetary emergency we have created. It's about the future of us. So, on this book, which is about the future of us, it will be very interesting that if you just say a kind of brief in the beginning, and then we will go through some of the important threads which this book talks about. Interestingly, this book isn't divided into chapters. Yeah,
Yeah, in fact, that was what I was going to say. That this
yeah,
book does not have an index. It does
right,
not have page numbers. It has page numbers, but it doesn't say where to find what chapter. It
right,
is
right.
more like a PowerPoint presentation, probably a
Yeah,
Prezi. It moves from one place to another and it comes
right.
back to another. So this book it's generally the book is by Stephen Emmott,
Yeah.
who is a Microsoft scientist in Cambridge, UK. This
Mhm,
book was given to me by my daughter in
mhm.
2013, and she was in
Okay.
Australia at that time in Monash. And a
Mm,
professor, Roger Schock from Cambridge, was visiting them, and he
right.
gifted the book. So the book was released in 2013, and It fell into my hands in 2013.
Oh, that's so
And
lovely. It's a
and
very
it's
unique story.
2024, and you
Yeah,
can see the way I've kept it.
right.
It's quite worn out. It looks like this one and Khalil Gibran's The Prophet are
Yeah.
always with me because there's so much in it. Uh, so what started as a professor's lecture
Hmm.
turned into a play,
Okay.
and the play turned into a book, and the
Right.
book in 2015 turned into a
Hmm.
documentary movie. And
Right.
I shall share the link of the movie when we are at the end of our talk. Uh,
Sure.
while a lot of people have thought that it's an extremely pessimistic view,
Yeah.
I think sometimes a drastic, really hard shake is what needs us to wake up to the
Mhm.
emergencies that we have. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, I was just looking at Worldometer before you went on to Facebook Live, and
Mhm.
today we are sitting at 8.1 billion. When
Okay. Okay.
Stephen Amott wrote
Yeah.
it, we were at 7 billion.
Yeah.
From 2012 to now, we've gone up 1 billion.
Okay.
And the book talks about 10 billion.
Oh.
So we're not going to go there in the next 20 years. It is going to take longer because fertility rates across the world are falling. People are getting a little, are more conscious. But it
Right.
is something that we need to worry not in terms of population, but
Hmm.
in terms of the only planet that we have,
Right.
the only earth that we know. And that brings me to the second page of the book, which
Right.
says Earth is home to millions of species.
Yeah.
Just one dominates it.
Mhm.
Us.
और आगे आगे लिखा है us, right?
Us. Yes,
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Brings me
Uh,
back to Gandhiji's thought
mhm.
that the earth has enough for everybody's needs, but not for
Mhm.
everyone's greed. I mean,
Yeah.
similar thoughts, but yes,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So it
Yeah.
brings us to what we are doing,
Mhm.
what was done, and
Yeah.
is there a solution? The book
Right.
deals with that.
Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, मैंने कहीं सुना था या पढ़ा था कि डेमोक्रेसी का जो एक अगला एक्सटेंशन है कि आगे कैसे ज्यादा रिप्रेजेंटेटिव फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट हो, तो उसमें था कि we should have cosmocracy, and in that cosmocracy there should be representatives, from the people who fight for the animal rights, the people who fight for uh, the tree and plantation, people who try to protect the sea and oceans. तो उन सबके representatives होने चाहिए parliament में who frames the law. I found it very interesting, and in fact that appears to be kind of path ahead, right? तो ये इस किताब में किस तरीके से मैंने देखा कि वो जो एक कहावत है कि नंबर स्पीक्स इन इटसेल्फ. So the writer has used this, uh, in the most appropriate way, and brought number to us. And I was like surprised to see that how the last 1 billion perhaps added in just 7-8 years. Uh, yeah, so very beautifully he brings the numbers and the graphs to tell that how we are moving, and then uh, I mean, so I would like your comment on it, that how through numbers he's trying to convince us that how important, not the word important, in fact, how uh, perhaps uh, immediate necessary it is to think about it and take action about it.
Absolutely. For all those who are listening in, there is a kind of presentation which is called infographics. Now,
Right, right.
infographics is a very visual tool of presenting something, not in terms of volumes, but in a space
Yeah,
that it catches your attention.
right.
The whole thing is something needs to catch my attention for it to sink in, and for me then to respond,
Yeah, yeah,
or to bring change. So this
yeah,
book is a good example of infographics.
yeah,
Numbers have the ability to jolt you.
yeah.
Numbers have the ability to tell you where you're going, because there is data, and data can be analyzed over time.
Right.
So I find that extremely useful even as a teaching tool. When I just tell something randomly, but when I
Yeah.
come with numbers, it has a greater
Right.
impact. So
Right.
if you permit, I'd like to read page 1, which is,
Of course.
which
Of
is the
course.
number with which is the page with numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Please do.
it says we humans emerged as a species about 200,000 years ago in
Right.
geological time that is really incredibly recent. It's just like
Mm.
yesterday.
Yeah.
Just 10,000 years ago, there were 1 million of us.
Right.
By 1800, 200 years ago, there were 1 billion, from
Mm.
1 million to 1 billion. In
Yeah.
1960, 50
Mm.
years ago, and I was born in 69, there were 3
Mm.
billion.
Mm.
There are now over 7 billion, and he said that in 2012. Like I said,
Mm.
Voltometer saying we are at 8.1 and ticking.
Yeah.
By 2050, your children or your children's children, that is my grandchildren who are already here, will
Yeah.
be living on a planet with at
Yeah.
least 9 billion other people.
Mm.
Sometime towards the end of the century, there will
Yeah.
be at least 10 billion of us, possibly
Yeah.
more.
Possibly more. Yeah. Later, I mean, he says that if the rate of population growth continues the way it is, it may touch up to 28 billion. It's not just 10 billion by the end of this century. And on this premise, he brings the rest of the question, because the more we are, the more demand we create for the consumption, as basic as the food consumption, right? And then he further analyzes that how at present, in fact, to serve this population of, let's say, around 8 crore, he wrote almost 10 years back that 40% of the total available land was under agriculture. So it means to feed more people, more agricultural land has to be cleared. It means clearing the forest and all, and its impact on the planet. So the kind of examples he is using, I also found that at most of the arguments that he makes, he turns to be a little pessimist. So he finds there doesn't appear to be a solution, right? So there are interesting examples from this food chain that he is talking about, that how it is going to create a problem, and it will be really interesting for us, to talk about it. Basically, that how food, which we find otherwise, easily accessible, we find that the Amazon or the other, online platforms or the shop nearby supplies it, but that's not the truth. And how it is going to be a huge crisis in the coming future, and also its implications for the climate change. It will be interesting for to know about this food thing which he is talking about.
So he really weaves the narrative very beautifully
Yeah,
between land, water, energy, biodiversity. That's the way the the narrative moves. And from starting of from mankind's movement from being hunter gatherers to settlers, where he settled down and started growing, and all the major civilizations, and to how that brought prosperity, and that started the increase in populations, right? To when the agricultural revolution, and he divides
agriculture.
that into 4 parts, the
Yeah,
latest being the green revolution.
yeah,
So while the green revolution produced enough food for more people, it
mm,
also started adding phosphates. So then he talks about how land was being abused,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And from the
yeah,
abuse of land, the abuse of water, the
mm,
minimal potable water that we have, and it
yeah,
doesn't only go into agriculture, it goes into 100 other things.
right,
And
right,
and we all know I live in Bangalore and there is no
yeah,
water. And I
true,
think one of the interesting statements that he makes is, now when I go to conferences on
yeah,
sustainability, I see military.
yeah,
I see a military presence because the next wars are going to be fought for this.
yeah,
Right?
because
So
of that.
because
Mm,
of that, and we already see it between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu every year.
okay,
right?
Right.
So and from that, from land and water and to energy, and I think this is something I really like to connect, and I tell my children, you know,
Mm,
when you are eating a delicacy from New Zealand,
mm,
it means it's grown there and it is deep frozen and it's shipped from New Zealand to India, and probably that's not
right.
its direct route. So the
Right.
energy that goes in bringing that fruit to you
Mm,
would be saved, right?
right.
So
Right.
when we say eat local,
Mm,
it has a sense. It says
mm,
when you're wearing, when you are minimalistic in your clothing.
mm,
So Stephen Emmott lives a really simplistic life.
yeah.
He wears he has very limited clothes. He doesn't own a car, is what I'm told.
And
And
particularly not a cotton cloth.
yes,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
think then we also have to do with our weather, but then we can have
Mm-hmm.
lesser number. So I think he talks about that in a sense. How much do you possess? How much are you aware of what takes place? And then
Yeah.
today, when we ate for survival, today we
Mm,
ate for pleasure.
mm,
You know, so the amount we eat, the amount we waste,
mm,
and then and we continue to eat, so which
yeah.
means we continue to grow. And then he
Yeah.
talks about vegetarianism and how
Mm,
much water is consumed to grow a chicken,
mm.
or
Yeah, so
yeah,
here I would like to bring this exact data because I found it very, very interesting.
yeah,
You know that when I read that to produce one burger, it requires 700 gallon of water. I was like, what? And he brings such a powerful data, you know. I just read it, I think, for for
please
our,
do.
yeah. So, for example, it takes almost 800 gallons of water to produce a burger. In 2012, about 5 billion burgers were consumed in the UK alone. That's about 4 trillion gallons of water on burgers just in the UK. It's estimated that at least 21 billion burgers are consumed in the US each year. That's more than 16 trillion gallons of hidden water to produce burgers in the United States in 1 year. So, and further he writes that 2,400 gallons of water to produce a chicken, 7,000 gallons of water to produce 1 kilogram of chocolate, right? And my God. And it takes 26 gallons of water to produce a cup of coffee, and that's before any water has actually been added to your coffee. So beautifully he writes, and this was how he brings our attention to the consumption and related to the water crisis and the depletion, because it's not just the water which appears to. In fact, he is also highlighting this point that the crucial information somehow doesn't come to us. We are not communicated, that what's the actual cost of something is, and what we pay is not the actual cost. Particularly, he brings example from the automobile industry, particularly the car, and he talks about the externalities. Uh, the harm that we cause to the environment around. And so this is we are not paying the actual cost, but tomorrow, for sure, the next generation will have to pay this cost. And this water example was really a kind of eye opener. Long back, I remember I read one article in the Hindu. It was about the rice export to other countries from India. And the article highlighted that it is not that the rice we export, it is this much, gallons of water that we export. And we are already, in a crisis. So that's how see in this book also how he is connecting it. So I found it extremely beautiful, and particularly this coffee example that before you add the coffee, it was already 23 gallon, before to produce one cup of coffee. I really found it, and this kind of data basically helps us to at least minimize the expenses or the consumptions that we otherwise unknowingly keep doing. He rightly argues that because we are not communicated properly, and this book appears to be one such effort in that field. What do you think?
You know, when I was reading this, and as a teacher of biology and someone who likes languages. I
Mm.
really liked the phrase that he used in this water example. He
Yeah.
spoke about water and hidden water,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
you know, and one word can make all the difference to the
Mm.
reader. That
Mm.
means I'm not seeing those 23 gallons or 28 gallons of hidden water that
Mm.
went into my one spoon of coffee.
Yeah. Coffee. Yeah.
Right?
And the best example he brings from the water bottle itself, and he writes, an irony of ironies. It takes something like 4 liters of water to produce a 1 liter plastic bottle of water. And in 2011, Americans consume per capita 222 bottles of water. That's approximately 70 billion bottles of water in a year, that for the whole country.
Just imagine.
So, look, in fact, even the water bottle that we are using, and it was like almost 10, 12 years ago, the data he's quoting, and the data which now I think it must be very, very terrifying now, the kind of consumption rate that is increasing.
Murari, I just wanted to add one thing here. I teach class
Mm-hmm.
12 biology, and there
Okay.
must be people in this group who teach the NCRT textbook. So,
Mm-hmm.
one of the chapters that we have there speaks about ecosystem services, eco
Yeah.
services. You know,
Yeah.
things that we take for granted in nature and think they're for free when
Mm.
they are unlimited. These
Mm.
resources will never get over. And there's this very beautiful 2 pages on that. It
Mm.
says, because it turns out that biological diversity is just not a nice thing to have.
Mm.
It is the very diversity of life on earth, the
Mm.
diversity that we are rapidly eroding,
Mm.
which produces and provides many vital planetary functions,
Mm.
including numerous ecosystem services, which
Mm.
is to say, the things nature provides for free, like our
Mm.
water, our food,
Mm.
and our climate.
Yeah.
Indeed, the loss of biodiversity on the current scale is inevitably going to mean the loss of the ecosystem function, and
Mm.
loss of ecosystem function is going to mean loss of these vital ecosystem services. The
Right.
loss of ecosystem services poses a very threat to our own survival.
Mm. Interesting. Chananji, you can join whenever you want to make comment
So
or ask a
basically,
question.
recently I saw one cartoon,
Huh.
Statue with More Liberty.
Mm.
I think you have seen that cartoon where Statue of Liberty is having a piece of pizza in one hand and a bottle of Coke in another hand. And that Statue of Liberty is like a kind of a fat woman actually lying on a
Yeah, I
couch.
also saw that cartoon. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So, and today we were at a venue
Mm.
for some kind of training, and we were given some water
Mm.
in a small bottles, 200 ml, I guess.
Yeah.
Usually, I carry my plastic bottles. Sorry,
Mm.
because the glass ones are easily breakable.
True.
So
Right.
I have to when I have to go there somewhere, I have to carry the plastic one only. But I saw
Mm.
that people usually looking for this is their right to have a, small bottle of you know, water from the
Mm.
organizer. Why we are making this a big deal? Why can't we have our own resources which we can easily manage? I remember,
Yeah.
my childhood times when I
Mm.
used to go have feast in our neighborhood, and we were supposed to carry our own, utensil to drink water from.
Mm.
The water was provided only from the the food provider, and we
Mm.
have to carry our own things to drink from it actually. And that was a very
Mm.
good practice. And that time people used to eat from the the banana leaves and lotus leaf or such biodegradable
Mm.
materials,
True.
which is
Yeah.
which takes less liter of waters to
Mm. Mm.
make that product, and that's
Mm.
not harmful to the nature as well. But
Yeah.
today, in the name of becoming more modern, more civilized, more
Mm.
sophisticated, We are
Mm.
like turning our
Yeah.
earth non-habitable actually.
Okay, yeah. After reading it, it definitely appears like that. So, after food and water, the third element that he talks about energy and particularly oil, and he also again flagged the concern uh, that at the rate we are consuming the petroleum oil or gases, it is totally unsustainable. And he again writes a very interesting sentence that while our politicians, our businesses, and our own stupidity look set to ensure we remain lethally addicted to oil, gas, and coal, it is worth pointing out that hundreds of millions of people rely every day on burning wood just to get by. So, and the next line I find very interesting: more black carbon is now produced every year than in the whole Middle Ages. So it's and then later he also discussed, and I would like to ask it from you as well, that I mean, how even it is possible to think a future without these, petroleum products, which appears to be a kind of given, natural. We know at some point that it's limited, but it appears that no. I mean, you see the government policies; it continue to promote that how people can buy more automobiles, and so and so. So how? I mean, first to communicate it that it is not sustainable, and what the alternatives could be.
Uh, so one, I'd like to go back to what Chandanji said about the water bottle.
Mm,
Because as a teacher, I'd like to go back to our practice in our school. So whenever we host an event in school, we let all the participants know when we send
mm,
in the program schedule that we
mm,
have RO filtered water in the campus. It will be
mm,
kept in big containers. Please bring your water bottles.
mm.
So we just do not supply,
That's
water
very
in
nice.
bottles. And
Yeah.
if they have to, then they have to buy it.
Mm,
So from the school, it's a no-no. The
mm,
second is, I know of a gentleman called Mr. Niranjan Khatri. He
mm,
used to be head of green hotels for ITC.
mm,
A man who changed the way hotels work to
mm.
be zero carbon hotels. He
Mm.
walks with a thela in his hand all the time.
Oh.
So wherever he goes, his thela is his bag where he will buy. He takes his
Mm,
own steel डब्बा. अगर पानी पूरी खाएंगे तो वहां
mm.
वो प्लास्टिक पेपर की प्लेट या प्लास्टिक की कटोरी नहीं लेंगे. वो
Oh.
अपने डब्बे में वो पानी पूरी डालेंगे, उसी से खाएंगे. And he's
Mm,
got a stainless steel का water bottle and also a straw.
mm, mm.
So I mean, he lives it every day, and he
Yeah.
tells people. He comes to schools and tells children how to brush with a mug of water. अब बैंगलोर
Oh.
में इतनी पानी की तकलीफ है, so everybody is having a bucket water bath
Mm, mm.
from showers and tubs.
Right,
So if
right.
we want to change, we can change, right? So
Mm.
we have the
We
alternatives.
we need many more such examples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming to oil.
So yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so he says again very beautifully, it's not going to the thing that we are told that these are limited and they're going to get over soon. New
Mm.
areas are being found every day.
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
in Siberia, in the Arctic, and in all of
Mm,
those areas, it's being found. And then
mm.
there are conglomerates that will not allow an electric vehicle in some parts of the world. United
Yeah.
States, for its, you and I have been there, Murari, and we know
Mm.
that public
Yeah.
transport is so dismal
Right, right.
because the car culture is so strong, the car lobby is so strong that private
Yeah.
transportation, which is the way to ease out thing,
Yeah.
is not there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also feel that a lot of work is happening in alternate energy. And,
Mhm.
India is doing a really good job with solar. Uh,
Yeah.
and I see, a lot of other countries also getting onto the wind energy. I think all of the Western Ghats, wherever I travel, I see so much of wind energy being harnessed.
Mm,
So
mm.
I think the younger generation is a lot more aware. They're
Yeah.
aware of their responsibilities and the world that they're going to live in. So
Yeah.
I think it is the awareness is certainly high. Dr. Emmett sometimes is a little pessimistic, I believe.
Yeah. So, I mean, after talking about the challenges, when it comes to talk about the solution, and the word which is using rational optimists, that there are two approaches which the rational optimists are suggesting. One is that we bring solutions through technology, and the other is by a radical change in our behavior. I mean, how we consume things. So, in the analysis, we find that he's not much more convinced about the technological changes. He talks about all these things like the solar panels or wind energy or the nuclear power. And then he also says that how there are limitations. So, like, even if we talk about the solar panels, so, the metals which are used to produce the solar panels, that has to be excavated, and that requires a lot of, intensive energy. And, it's not a kind of replacement of the traditional mode of energy which we are using, and so on. I mean, he talks about how the nuclear energy is not politically favorite for the politicians, and also decomposing the nuclear waste is a big task, and this is why generally people are not very much interested in it. So he talks about all these different alternate sources of energy, and then also highlight the limitations that we have. And he actually admits that he doesn't know what will happen, as you mentioned that he's more like a pessimist. But the second option appears to be where, in fact, each one of us can work. Where we need not to wait that the government will bring the legislation and that will bring the solution. That is about the radical change in the behavior, that how we consume, if that we can bring a change. And already you gave the example. So what do you feel about it? I mean, what are the options?
I do agree that while science and technology will do its their part of it, we all need to make lifestyle changes.
Mhm.
We have become a very consumeristic society.
Yeah.
I remember in the 70s when I was a little girl, my grandmother would never waste a sari. The sari will turn into a dupatta. From that, it would turn into a frock. From there, it would turn into a handkerchief. It would be used. Clothes would be stitched and restitched till they were decently worn. Small pieces of cloth would turn into godri. That would become our kambal.
Right.
हम कोई चीज अगर किसी चीज की आई मीन हम छीलते थे किसी सब्जी के पील को, फिर उसकी सब्जी बनती थी.
Right.
टुडे दैट्स नॉट द केस. आई मीन लेते ज्यादा है, खाते कम है, फिकता ज्यादा है. राइट. एंड एक बटन निकल गया तो ड्रेस फिक जाता है. राइट. उसको वो हम मेंड नहीं करते कि उसको ठीक कर दें फिर यूज कर लें. फट गया तो एक टाका लगा दें, वो नहीं है. So I think these changes need to happen. And it's Ethiopia में he says, Ethiopia में drought चल रहा है कहीं और, but it's not कहीं और, it is हमारे लाइफ में. आज बैंगलोर में हो रहा है. IISc के साइंटिस्ट कहते हैं इस तरह चला तो 5 साल में बैंगलोर खाली हो जाएगा. People will leave Bangalore and go because with no water, no people.
और दिल्ली तो आ नहीं सकते, यहाँ ऑलरेडी पॉल्यूशन वाला प्रॉब्लम है.
बिल्कुल. जो तुम कह रहे थे कि स्मोक एंड स्मॉग एंड ब्लैक APC, तो you're already there.
Right.
Where do we go? Where do we go?
That ABC phrase is also very interesting that he is using.
Yes.
That the brown smokes which are already there.
And then he says with all of us who will have no place to go, he says countries like the UK and the Scandinavian countries which have a better environment will become heavily guarded. There will be military around them, fencing keeping all of us out of it.
Yeah. And this is the reason he counts that why the militaries are attending the climate conferences.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, there are higher chances that there will be climate-led migration in coming decades when the places would become inhabitable around. So that's really when I was talking about that the alternate sources, which we also call renewable sources of energy. So I just came across this data which he is using, and that's his strength. I would like to read it. That to achieve this, we will need to build, roughly speaking, something like 1,800 of the world's largest dams, 23,000 nuclear power stations, 14 million wind turbines, and 36 billion solar panels. After this paragraph, he writes, I doubt it that this will happen, right? Because the kind of mammoth exercise it is. And here again, as I told you, that this book is not exactly about the educational literature, but how it is related. Uh, if we look carefully about the practices we do in the schools, there is a common phrase कि ठीक से पढ़ाई करो तो नौकरी मिलेगी, right? So the way market, government policies, social aspirations, it drives people towards more and more consumptions. You know how we identify the social status, basically by seeing who is consuming more. So the people with more number of car, people with bigger houses, people with multiple, clothes options. Uh, that's how the society creates the standard of success. And the children who are coming to our schools, somehow it gets, imposed or, inbuilt in their mind that पढ़ना अच्छे पढ़ने का ये मतलब होता है, पैकेज होता है, इतने पैसे मिलते हैं और ज्यादा कंजम्पशंस होते हैं, they will travel more, they will consume more. I I assume that this standard has to be broken. This has to be, in fact, it has to be put upside down, right? And we have to create this standard that the people who live on minimum resources, they are ideal people. And how is it possible, basically? As of now, it seems, a gigantic task. I mean, we go to the school and we say कि ठीक से पढ़ाई करो तो अच्छी नौकरी मिलेगी. कैसे ये हो सकता है?
स्कूल्स को एग्जाम्पल्स तो बनना पड़ेगा मुरारी.
Hmm.
वी आर द माइक्रोकॉज्म ऑफ सोसाइटी.
Yeah.
बच्चे जो फ्यूचर में देखेंगे वो उनको स्कूल में वो दिखना चाहिए.
Hmm.
फिर तो हमारे यहाँ एक बार हम पढ़ा रहे थे कि हम लोग को पानी इतने आराम से मिल जाता है.
Hmm.
राजस्थान में एंड मेनी अदर पार्ट्स ऑफ द कंट्री women हैव टू कैरी लीटर्स ऑफ वाटर.
Yeah.
तो हमने एक प्रोग्राम रखा, हमने बच्चों से कहा कि 2 लीटर बॉटल पानी का घर से लेके आना.
Hmm.
एंड दे ब्रॉट वाटर एंड वी वॉकड फ्रॉम आवर स्कूल टू
Hmm.
द मेन रोड.
Hmm.
एंड हमने कहा उस दिन वी विल गो एंड गिव वाटर. उस जमाने में देयर वाज वन दैट पार्ट ऑफ बैंगलोर वाज गेटिंग ड्रिंकिंग वाटर ट्वाइस अ वीक.
Okay.
So they carried 2 liters and then some of them could not carry their 2 liters, so they dumped it on somebody else who carried 3
Hmm.
liters. So the
Hmm.
able carried 3, the one who were not very capable carried 1.
Right.
And the whole thought was कि आज उसमें से हम एक घूंट नहीं पिएंगे. We will go and give it to a house जिन्होंने कभी इस हफ्ते उनको पानी नहीं आया.
Hmm.
It brought such realization कि जो
Oh.
स्कूल के बाद बच्चे ना अपना वाटर बॉटल का पानी एक दूसरे के ऊपर होली खेल देते थे, फेंक देते थे, वैसे
Yeah.
अब नहीं करेंगे.
Right.
See, it's short-lived. They did it after another month. But
Hmm.
the whole thing is you need to reinforce this again and again and again.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that has to be lived. अगर हम कहें कि
Yeah.
कहीं राजस्थान में कोई चलती है पानी लेने, it's never going to happen.
Absolutely. And here the teacher has a great role to play, basically, right? So,
Absolutely.
I mean, what they flaunt, if they're flaunting different set of mobile phones or clothes or their possessions, it won't make a difference if we call them to live, on a minimum resources. Here is the opportunity for the teachers, basically, to bring that significant change in how they see the standards, what the standards are. एक नॉर्मल कपड़े में भी, आई मीन, आई एम जस्ट आल्सो टॉकिंग, आई एम आल्सो लाइक वेरी फॉन्ड ऑफ ठीक ठाक कपड़ा पहनना, राइट? So I in fact myself has to bring that change in myself. uh, I would also like to draw your attention towards what he brings in this book about artificial photosynthesis.
Yes.
And here he is a little optimistic. बाकी इनको कहीं ऑप्टिमिज्म नहीं दिखता है कि कोई टेक्नोलॉजी को कर सकता है. but artificial photosynthesis से इनको लगता है कि कुछ किया जा सकता है. So what it is and how can it be a possible solution of our needs in the future?
So here he's talking about how technology can be used to harness sunlight and artificial chlorophyll to make both food and oxygen to fill the air. So there is a project that is already happening in the world. It's called the Green Tree, I think. I'm not very sure. And recently, there is a young girl in Bangalore who did a project on this of synthesizing oxygen from artificial plants. And the process is there, but yes, science is possible. It is possible. I feel so much is possible with science. We are coding with in computers, we code with 1 and 0, right? Just binary. The genetic code has 4, right? It has A, C, T, and G. And if tomorrow both of them were to combine, and then that's when the chip will become a part of my DNA,
Right.
right? And then man and machine are one,
Yeah.
right? So the possibilities are immense,
Immense. Yeah.
immense.
It's not limited as he is claiming, right?
Yeah.
But what I also found very interesting, generally what happens when people from the West, write the books on such issues and particularly highlights the population rise, they generally hold developing world responsible for it. But he is also holding West to the truth and power, responsible and he claims that in the coming decades, there will be more demand of food consumptions from, let's say, the developing world. And there, in fact, they need it because a large number of people are, going hungry and they do not have enough food. They will need it, and that's a justified one. But where it need to be worked, that is basically in Europe and America or the developed part of the world, who are like eating more. And that I found very interesting. That his idea of overpopulation is not a kind of blame game that people who are not educated and they are doing it. It's about he tries to look it as a collective problem. When he brings the list that how it's happening in Zambia, in Nigeria, he also adds United States over there. So that I found a little different. Otherwise, the trend is particularly in the climate debate. That it's the developing countries, it's China, it's India. They are now responsible for most of the climatic problem, right? But the West has already achieved that through 200 and 300 years of industrial revolution and all. But it's the time of India and China and other Asian countries. So generally, the climate debate tries to, label the Asian countries or the developing countries responsible, and there are a tremendous pressure that they cut their, expenditure, they cut their consumptions, they need to bring green technology, and on the other hand, those countries will not supply green technology; they have the patent over it. So, but in this book, he's not playing that clever, and he's holding, the power to the truth, both to the US also and to the UK also. That I found very, very interesting. Yeah.
In fact, he comes to a point where he says that this conglomerate of these European and Western countries are actually debilitating the resources of South America, Asia, Africa. I mean, they're buying vast stretches of land, they're deforesting them. The Amazon is losing 40 football fields, is what it said a day. That's the rate at which the Amazonian jungles are turning into cornfields.
And that was in 2013 when he was writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't know how many more football fields are going. Yes, but he does say that I really like that part as well, where he said that those of us who are eating too much must stop to give the others who are actually not getting food.
Right. Fantastic. And particularly the car example, that will be like very relevant for all of us to know. That's the last example we are taking. We are actually reaching towards the end of an hour-long conversation. Because this is something which we all are. So it feels like that if we are driving, let's say, on CNG or the electric vehicles. We are helping in, the climate protection. But the truth is that it is not, and particularly how he brings the example that the car seats, the leather that we are using, and how it is produced, how it is transported from one part of the world to the other part of the world, and in that whole process, how much that externalities that is being used, and that's a huge harm to the environment. When I read it, I found it. In fact, I use electric car, and I found it. I'm no more actually helping the environment, right? And so I have started using it wherever possible if I can take the public vehicles. I mean the public transport. So I mean I again bring that point. What he's also highlighting, that we are not communicated properly. That you look at the media, it doesn't talk about that the electric cars are not the solution. Yeah, not having cars are the solution, not the electric cars. Isn't?
And which means infrastructure change. If in Denmark
Yeah,
and Sweden, they can have
yeah,
cycling lanes,
yeah,
where people can, you can't walk or cycle on a road in our city, you'll get hit, right?
yeah.
But there they promote it. So, it will require, changes at all levels from individual
All levels.
to, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and a couple of things like some policy changes, like long back around, I think around in 2004, maybe. Yeah, no, I don't remember exactly. 6, 7. There was a policy called that Manrega, which was introduced, that
True.
promised 100 days of job to rural people in their villages. So look how that one policy cuts down so much of transportation, migration from one place to other place. Otherwise, he is predicting that by 2050 there will be 70% people in the cities, and that means, we are adding another huge pressure, which on our urban infrastructure is already under the pressure. So the policy changes, the tweaks, in the policy that may have a lot of impact, but of course that is not in our hand. So before we end, Manjuji, something, the final message that you would like to read from this book, or you would like to share.
I'd like to read one page from this book, and I'd like all of you to close your eyes and listen to this
Okay.
story.
Okay.
Okay. Let's look at this. If we discovered tomorrow that there was an asteroid on a collision course with Earth, and because physics is a fairly simple science, we are able to calculate that it was going to hit Earth on 3rd of June 2072, and we knew that its impact was going to wipe out 70% of all life on Earth, governments worldwide would marshal their entire planet into unprecedented action. Every scientist, engineer, university graduate, businessman would be enlisted, half to find a way of stopping it, the other half to find a way for our species to survive and rebuild if the first option proved unsuccessful. We are in almost precisely that situation now, except that there isn't a specific date and there isn't an asteroid. The problem is us. We
Fantastic.
started with us, we end with us.
Right. Very fantastic.
Yeah,
And
satisfying.
the last the last thing that I would like to read, just one sentence. In short, we urgently need to consume less. चंदन जी कहाँ से आवाज आ रही है? Can we mute all?
अच्छा था, कल खाना अच्छा था.
Okay, now, okay, yeah. So, yeah, I was reading the last sentence from this book. In short, we urgently need to consume less, a lot less, and we need to conserve more, a lot more. I find that this is a beautiful message that he's giving, and that is something which in our hand. The rest, what the government does, what the policy happens, we have very less control over it. But of course, on consumption and conservation, we can do a lot. So it was a big day for most of the friends. It's a working day, and of course, I know, Manjuji, how hectic the schedule has been for you in the last couple of weeks. Despite that, you took time, you came with us. I'm really thankful for being a part of this, conversation around a very interesting theme. That is, I'll say that it's about protecting the climate. It's about protecting our own earth. Any last comment you would like to make?
I'd like to take some comments from Chandanji.
So basically, ma'am, actually, I was going through the chat box and I noticed how our colleagues are responding to throughout the session. Though we are, less in number today due to the various reasons, but I'm, thankful that the people who remain with us are the one who are more serious into something. And we have Mr. Ashok Tiwari with us, who is an author himself. So we can see some science teachers, some English teachers, and some language teachers as well. And they were all could relate to this thing. So, as you said, the schools must be working as a model that if we can show our kids that what exactly it's
Do you
going
have
to
7+
be.
years
Hello. Okay,
Sorry,
fine.
go ahead,
So
sir.
then they can relate to. It's not like somewhere it's happening in Rajasthan. How we can give them the more contextual things so that they can relate to. They can they will be an agent. Those those who are able to bring that change into our society. So I'm very thankful to you that you find this time for us, and I'm glad that though we go with the educational genre book, but this time we picked this one, 10 million.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
This gave me billion more reasons to recommend this book to many other readers as well.
absolutely.
sir.
It's just a 2-3 hour reading, so I mean, most of you can try. It's an amazing book. And now, when you leave this and go and have a coffee, remember it's 23 gallon of water before you add water to your coffee.
Murari sir, I
Sure.
think people are would like to ask or comment here as well. So I open the house to
Okay.
any question or comment.
Okay. So,
To
if any
our,
friend would like to make any comment or observation or ask question from Manjuji, you're welcome. If any one of you. I
Ashok
guess
sir,
it
I
was
would
a
like
long.
to go with you. Upma ma'am.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
It was an amazing reading session, ma'am. Thank you to you. And throughout the session, I was hooked because I'm myself a biology teacher and I could actually, connect to almost everything that you were speaking.
Thank you.
And there's one more thing that I would like to share with everyone, that we all have done a small study in which we have developed the case studies with SCRT. और उसमें हमने अपने 6 to 8 के लर्नर्स को SDGs के लिए सेंसिटाइज करने के लिए कुछ शॉर्ट स्टोरीज डेवलप की हैं. सो उन्हीं में से ही एक मेरे को बहुत याद आ रही है कार्बन फुटप्रिंट को लेकर, एंड देयर आर मेनी अदर्स. आई विल शेयर दैट PDF with you all. So I think you will all like it. I will share that definitely with you. And I would really love to hear from you.
Sure, Upma
Sure,
ji.
thank you.
Certainly do that.
Thank you, Upman. Yeah, Chandanji, I think it was a long day for all, and let's wind it up. And in the next session, we will meet again with a new book with another amazing reader. And this time, I'm really grateful that Manjuji joined us. Thank you, Manjuji.
Thank you.
For being a part of this read with
And
Teacher
get well
family.
soon, Murari. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chandanji.
Bye.
Bye.